if their parents have been dealing with an awful lot of stress and challenges. And so one of the most important things we can do, along with making sure that babies get off to a good, healthy start, is to make sure that we keep increasing access to universal, we hope someday, pre-K for all our kids here. And it's not just a matter of how many spaces we have available, but are those spaces of high quality? Because we've got a really fractured educational environment these days with a wide range of quality, whether it's in our public schools, whether it's in charter schools, whether it's in voucher programs that don't have to meet the same criteria that public schools do. And we need to be letting our legislators know that if they don't do anything else, can't we get our children taken care of? That's where it all starts. That's where, as a state, we have the hope to have a viable and productive and wonderful future in every regard. So to ignore quality for our children, we do that at our greatest risk as a state as well as a local community. So for the last decade or so, we've had a wonderful collaborative group that has been working on early childhood pre-K priority issues. They've been looking at that from every angle possible. They have been exploring as a collaborative ways to make sure that what is offered is high quality and that it's expanded in terms of numbers. They've been advocating out the wazoo. They've been looking for funding. They've been braiding and blending programs so that you can have high quality pre-K in half-day programs or in full-day programs, in childcare programs, in public schools, in other locations. So there's a lot of wonderful work that's been going on for over a decade. We're going to hear today from some of the members of the steering committee. I may look at my notes a minute just not to forget anything, and I'll go in the order that they're seated there. Katura Jackson has been the executive director of our local child care resource and referral for over 25 years. And before that, even 10 more years, she was very involved in early childhood work in Charlotte. And she commutes from Charlotte. So if you can just kind of wrap your head around that a little bit, that 25 years of driving back and forth to Charlotte, my dear. Yes. Okay, Katura did her undergraduate at Spelman and her master's at UNC Charlotte. And next to her, we have Dr. Kathy Paley. And Kathy has, I mean, it's just so much fun to see what expertise sits at these tables. So Kathy did her medical work at our own Wake Forest School of Medicine, but then she went on and did another layer of her medical work at Baylor and still more at Vanderbilt, and she did her undergraduate at Vanderbilt too. So Kathy brings a wealth of medical experience and expertise and also understands as a pediatrician why it matters that these kids have access to good programs. And then next to her, we have Molly Markey. Did I say that correctly? Molly is a parent sitting on this steering committee. But Molly also brings expertise having a master's in marketing, and she's about to finish in May her master's in social work. So congratulations, Molly. And finally, we have the moderator or coordinator of this whole enterprise that's been herding all these cats for the last decade or so, Leslie Mullenix. And she's one of those in her own self, a divided house with undergraduate from state and her master's from UNC. I'm not sure how you hold those two hats together, Leslie. They have not only prepared a wonderful program today, but wonderful slides that we hope you get to see. If you don't get to see them all today, we will send them out afterwards. We're having a problem with the connection here. Apparently, so many people use this room that the connection has been loosened up over time. So our youthful member of the planning committee, Spence, will try to hop up and keep reconnecting. And so we hope you get to see these good slides now, but if not later. And they'll be able to at least stay on track with what they would be showing to you as they make their talk. You all do want to come around as you come to the podium so that we don't add anything by tripping over the cord. So again, please welcome this wonderful panel and thank them for their work.
Thank you so much, Dean. I mean, honestly, Dean could probably do this presentation with her eyes closed because she has been such a stalwart member of not only this community, but the state in terms of her early childhood work with More at Four and Smart Start. So Dean actually was one of, I think, the catalyst folks that was at the table when we started this work too. So she's been a lifelong person, I think, in terms of understanding education and what it brings to not only our community, but all the stakeholders that are involved. So thank you, Dean, and the whole Knollwood team. Thank you for having us. We were here a couple of years ago, I think in 2023. I was looking back and we've made some progress since then. So we're glad to share that with you. I am going to use probably a couple of notes. I will try to stay on track here. I know that we have a good amount of information to share with you. We're going to try to do that in the span of 30-40 minutes, and then we'll get to some questions at the end. So this is what we want to be able to kind of move through today: the purpose, history, and recent progress. I told someone beforehand, I think it was today, I said, I don't want people's eyes to glaze over and be like, I know all this, but I feel it's really important to kind of level set for you guys the first part of this work in the last couple of years, kind of the trajectory of where we've been and where we're going. Also, we're going to highlight the business case for pre-K. That was something we focused on a lot last year, and Katura is going to talk to you a little bit more about that, because we know in the places where this has been successful, it takes the full community, and businesses are a critical piece of that. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And then the 2026 strategic goals, we really want to bring you up to speed on what we're doing right now and what we feel is possible. So some of our panelists that are helping lead that work are going to talk about those, a couple of those strategic goals. Okay, how many of you guys are aware of the pre-K priority? Just a show of hands. See, almost all of you. You're already ambassadors for this work. I do like to restate, though, what our mission is. And I was thinking about this the other day when I was going through my notes. It's like, our mission has not changed. We have really tried not to have mission drift. Now, we may sometimes focus on different things, but our mission has remained the same, which is educating, engaging, and mobilizing the public to secure the commitment of our civic leaders. That's a key word. And our whole community, but really our civic leaders on some level, to establish a high quality system of pre-K programs that are available to all 4-year-olds and their families. So that's all 4-year-olds, high quality pre-K. Why are we focusing on 4-year-olds? So that's sometimes the question we get from folks that aren't as familiar with this work. It seems like you guys are all kind of already in the camp of, yes, we need this. But we do like to emphasize, this has been a big part of the business case. There are a lot of evidence-based results that we know come from all the research that's been done on this. These are some of the highlights, but one of the main things we know is school readiness. And, you know, those 3rd grade reading scores are huge. Math and literacy, and then social emotional aspects of kids having a positive experience in their school career is part of that foundational year of pre-K. So we're not talking about just 3rd grade, we're talking about the life course. We see that there are outcomes throughout the life course that include higher graduation, better income, and then also, I was talking with Marcy, who over there, we were talking about how this impacts community on a deeper level. We know that also there are less encounters with the criminal justice system if our kids have a good foundation year before kindergarten. And if that isn't reason enough, you know, we're trying to talk about early investment. So again, that trajectory of return on investment, we know that James Heckman, who is a leading economist in this work, has talked about for every $1 invested, there's about $7 return if they have a high quality pre-K. So you're reducing the amount of so many things that could intervene with a child, not only the formative years, but life course years. So high return on investment if you invest early. Okay, so what is a high quality system? What we talk about here is just some highlights is access and affordability. Those are 2 of the main things. We know there's a lot of good slots available here. They're not always affordable, but they're certainly not always accessible. Transportation has been one of the ongoing issues that we've been trying to figure out, and we still haven't. And that's going to be something that we need to partner more closely with the city and the county. The other thing is a choice of programs. So we want to keep the infrastructure that's already been built. We have a good infrastructure started that includes the Winston-Salem Forsyth County schools. They have pre-Ks in a lot of our elementary schools. We have Head Start centers that are some of the best in terms of the quality within the county. And then we also have a lot of community-based centers and family child care homes. Those are licensed by the state, and we have a lot of 4- and 5-star, but Katura is going to talk to you about the decrease in those for over the last, especially 5 years since the pandemic. So really quickly, again, this is where I don't want to be death by PowerPoint. So you guys, I'm not going to read all this, but we've got about 4 phases we like to bucket this work into and say so much a big thank you to KP Reynolds Charitable Trust for supporting this work, because the exploratory phase started in 2014. That's when a large group, and I mentioned Dean was a part of that, had started with family services convening, like, how could this maybe even happen? Do we have the capacity? Do we have the will locally to do something around universal pre-K? So after exploring and talking about it, and I cannot forget Katura was a part of that original group as well. So she's really been here since the beginning. But after that, moving into phase 2 was really when they started getting better organized and starting to think about how could this look with the steering committee. That's when KP Reynolds Charitable Trust came alongside with the Great Expectations work that they were leading and said, this aligns with our goals. We want to help support you. We also had In Creative, I see them in the back, representatives. They're a local firm, advertising and communications. They have been, again, incredibly helpful with helping us get our messaging out and crafting a message for all the different stakeholders that we've been trying to connect with. So we started that work. We launched a public education campaign in 2019. It was going gangbusters. We were having fun. We were getting out in the community. And then guess what happened? 2020, global pandemic, basically shut everything down for everyone. Life did not look the same. We had to pivot to doing mostly online and kind of digital work to connect with community. But like we say, a lot of people say this, in crisis comes opportunity. So we were able to step into an interesting relationship with the county that we had not had. We had been coveting a way to have an ambassador or a champion from the county level of government that we had not had. And just to highlight, and this will be something, again, Katura says, all the other counties that have been successful doing this with local funding have had a champion from the county. That was something we've been missing. So Commissioner Don Martin, who was chair at the time, came alongside us and said, I've been seeing the good work you're doing. I know you've been trying to advocate for us to come alongside you. How about we do a task force for a year? So a time-limited task force, and we had Superintendent McManus and Don Martin co-chair that. So we had a year-long time of getting together, mostly via Zoom, with 30 influential community members, leaders, and talking about what we had, the information and research we'd amassed to date. How do we really actualize this and get their influence to help push it forward? Coming out of that were also those pandemic dollars, those funding streams, the American Rescue Plan Act. Luckily, again, because we had formed these relationships, we were able to gain some access to some of those funds, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So we also, in phase 4, starting in 2023, we had a reset. Coming out of the pandemic, we had a lot of people who had retired, moved to other places, and then just basically were tired. You know, what does this mean for us? Like, it was, I think the whole world was doing a reset, and that's kind of what we did. We relooked our steering committee. We tried to be more intentional with who was at the table and who was missing. And we invited a little broader diversity of folks to the table to be a part of the steering. Okay, so one of the things I want to center on before I move into the last piece of what I'm going to talk about with those ARPA dollars is right now in Forsyth County. And then Katura is going to talk a little bit more about this too, about the demographics. But what we know the challenge is, and we're really trying to do a better job of tying this to reasons to support this at the local level, is right now we have 45% of 4-year-olds in a licensed program. You don't have to be a mathematician to see the majority of our kids are not in a program. Now, that's fine if that's the choice of the family, if they want to keep their kids at home or do a family friend or neighbor caregiver situation, great. But we know a lot of those parents, based on the research that we've heard, would rather have the opportunity to maybe go to work and have their kid in a good high quality pre-K. So we're not doing a very good job of meeting the need. Also, there's 44% of our third graders, this is the big one, tying it to school infrastructure, only 44% of our third graders in the school system are at reading grade level at that end of grade, third grade score. That is critical. If you don't know anything else about education, you probably hear that over and over. And at the state level, it's 47%. Those numbers aren't good either, but I mean, we're at 44%. We're not doing something that we need to do, and part of that is not preparing kids for kindergarten. And the big thing too is there's an equity issue. You look at the number of children that are Black children, 33%, and Hispanic children, 29%, that make up 60% of that number of our demographic, and those children are not reading at third grade. So we need to do this for that reason as well. All right, so what did we do with those ARPA dollars? And when I say ARPA, that's the American Rescue Plan Act. What we went to the county and proposed was that the 19 recommendations that came out of their task force report, that we implement about 6 or 7 of those with that money. We did not create new classrooms because we knew it was unsustainable to create classrooms and then expect them to go on after the money left. So what we tried to do was make sure we took existing classrooms and tried to focus on the ones who had the least resources and put the money towards the resources that they needed. So high quality things that included, we go back here. I'm just trying to give you a top line idea. The biggest chunk of money that was spent for that was around workforce and teacher parity, pay parity. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But the other thing we did was make sure that children had and teachers had the curricula that they needed in the classroom, so a high quality evidence-based curriculum. We also did family engagement that had not been done in a lot of centers before to really have parents as first teachers emphasized, and so they would understand a better connection with their child and with their teacher. And then I do want to talk about the outcomes real quick because we've got 3 other panelists. I don't want to take up their time. But one of the things that we're really going to lean into as we kind of go back to the county and talk to them about the outcomes is these students in the program, they exceeded the North Carolina pre-K standards or averages in 4 of 6 categories that they measure for kindergarten readiness. So there's 6 domains. And the kids that were in, 710 kids that were in our 2-year program, they did better than the state average in 4 of those domains. So that it does show if you put high quality in the classrooms and if you pay the teachers, you get better outcomes. Teacher salary parity is the one I was mentioning. That was the hugest investment. And that was one of the things that we saw, not only with pay parity, but retention bonuses for teachers and credentialing support so they could go back to school and get higher credentials. We were able to bridge the gap of sometimes a $10,000 to $14,000 gap for teachers that were maybe in a private center getting paid less than the school system pre-K teacher. And of course, you guys probably all know the school system has to pay at a salary scale. So they're required to pay at a certain amount. Private pre-K, usually about $42,000, and we had some of our private providers making it $28,000. And that's comparable not only with experience, but their credentialing. And you had some people with that much of a gap. So with making sure that there was a pay parity and a supplement and a retention bonus, they were able to see a retention increase from 62% of the teachers being retained in years prior to ARPA, that 2 years. After that, we had an 83% retention rate, which is a lot better than even the state average. So again, there are outcomes that show it makes sense to invest. Okay, I am going to turn the stage over to Katura for the next part of talking about the demographics.
If I can make it up. And I'm not an Apple user, so which of these buttons do I
I
need?
know.
Just a little forward. Right here. Okay. Hey, everybody. Where are the children is basically the question that's being asked here. And if you take a look, every year we have about 4,500 4-year-olds. That's been, as long as I've been here for 25 years, we've had about 4,500 4-year-olds. We just don't have as many using license or formal care. So if you look at 2023, you can see we had 40% not enrolled. And then in 2025, we have 49% not enrolled. So you have to think about, where are these children? 20% are licensed, 31% publicly funded, and that means like Head Start, public pre-K, which is called, what is it called? NC pre-K. And then some are enrolled in half-day programs like part-day preschool programs. And so when you look at how many children we have, 4,500, and then you take that number, there are quite a few children who are somewhere. We don't know exactly where they are. And we just need to figure that out and do a better job, which is why we're pushing for universal pre-K.
Can I ask a question about that
Yeah.
second circle?
Maybe. Yeah.
It's adding up to over 100%, so I'm wondering if there's a typo in one of those numbers.
Maybe. I'm
So
glad you can do
100%,
that. The 18% are probably not enrolled in formal care.
That's right.
They should,
Okay.
it should be in that
That's part of that.
49%.
That's part of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was
Yeah.
one of the things in the slide, in the original slide, we had it like as a little subset.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think we just missed in the pretty version, getting it back into that. So
That makes sense.
look
Thank
at
you.
that quick math. You
Mhm. So when you think about why parents aren't using licensed care, part of it is because it costs a lot. Part of it is because they don't have access. And then part of it is because there's no staffing in childcare programs. So there's a workforce retention issue. Leslie mentioned that they were paid $28,000 a year. I think that's on the upper end for childcare providers. Some of them make $12, some of them make $10, some of them make $7. I mean, you think about they're caring for our most precious citizens, our youngest citizens, making $7 an hour is not a whole lot. Leslie mentioned this earlier about funding opportunities in other counties. We have Wake and Mecklenburg. It's been quite a good bit, 28.8 million in Mecklenburg annually. And then Durham and Buncombe, which are smaller than Forsyth, who don't spend quite as much as Mecklenburg, but still have made an investment. And that investment has been over the past at least 5 years. And so we have $0 in county investment in Forsyth, other than the ARPA dollars that Leslie was talking about earlier. And so when you look at that, it's like, okay, what do we need to do in Forsyth to get our children enrolled in licensed care so that they can be ready for school and ready to learn? All right, so last year, Leslie mentioned this also, we had a 4-part community series on childcare. The first one was the childcare crisis. The Leadership Winston-Salem, county leaders, community leaders came together. And so this one was talking about childcare as a community issue, not just a family issue. And then we had the Reach Women's Network Teach Out series. That was focused on women and women having access to work. And childcare is a big part of that. Then Greater Winston-Salem, Pre-K Priority. That one was more focused on employee retention and helping businesses understand why people need to work. And then we have Pre-K Counts, I think it was called Child Care Matters. But, it was focused on small businesses and how the lack of childcare is impacting them. So we've talked to all these people in the community, trying to build this coalition, trying to figure out why and how we can change public will and get people to invest in. That little thing messed me up. Get people to invest in early education in general, and particularly in pre-K, because pre-K seems to be an easier sell. It's 4-year-olds, people are getting ready to go to school. And so just thinking about that. And then when you think about child care and Forsyth, we have 25,000 children birth to 5. We have 5,000 child care slots in licensed care. And so when people are saying, I can't find child care, it's true. Because 5,000, 25,000 doesn't add up. And so where are those other 17,000 children? And then quality, we need to have quality slots, not just slots. And then we also need affordable slots. Families really can't afford to pay $1,200 a week or a month for child care. So this is what we call the trilemma. So ways that you can take action, get involved, get informed, partner with providers, partner with other businesses. We have a couple of examples in our community. We have TriShare. I don't know if you've all have heard of TriShare. It's a state project where the employer pays part, the child care center pays part, and then the parent pays part. So it's a third. And so that's something new and different that communities are trying. Sorry, my leg is, I do better when I sit than when I stand. And so in Forsyth, we have the, what is it, Thriving Together? I'm good, Thriving Together. And so that is a new center at Brookridge and Empress Cares. I don't know if y'all have seen that. They have spaces available. And so that is a way for, thank you, honey. That's not gonna help them leave. I appreciate it. So just thinking about, you know, how businesses can come together, how we can support families in this effort, and what we can do as a community to make a difference in the lives of children. And so now I'll turn it over to Kathy.
Thank you. So, as part of the work we've been doing, it was important for the pre-K priority steering committee to really be thinking about how can we be effective and efficient in what we're doing. So in 2025, we came together and agreed on a common unified agenda. And the driving community outcomes, so all children thrive. And so what we focused on is sustain healthy coalition, communications, branding, and marketing to reach a target audience to advance the mission, additional funding for new pre-K priority slots, as well as ensuring that had great quality, and making progress towards creating a seamless early childhood education to the kindergarten transition. Oh my, all right, so the fun continues. So the highlight, so in 2026, we came together and said, okay, what exactly are we going to do? And what is measurable, actual, and aligned with the common agenda? So we're working on 5 different components. One is we're developing a blueprint for children's health and assessment community care for the Forsyth County families to support the pre-K. And it's really to say, anybody in any program, come here and we're going to get you ready. Determine the most relevant action items within the pre-K equity implementation plan, to create a guiding principles of a pre-K to kindergarten transition framework, so that when children arrive, everybody is prepared. Update pre-K data, including enrollment rates across early childhood landscapes, similar to what Katura just showed, and then advocate for local sustainable funding dedicated to support and grow high quality pre-K. So the first one I'm going to talk about is developing a blueprint for children's health assessment community fair for Forsyth County families to support pre-K enrollment. Everybody knows that before you start kindergarten, you need your vaccines, you need your health forms, and if you don't have those, you're going to be removed from school. So we want to minimize those barriers, but also create a fun experience. One of the things is this used to occur when they started the original, and so can we learn on that? Can we bring more partners together, and can we create the excitement in the community for pre-K? And so it's really thinking about trying to create a one-stop shop for families to assess the necessary screenings, documents, to enroll in pre-K, to facilitate the planning and cultivate the collective participation of community stakeholders, and create a framework of resources and infrastructure for the event, and then also to coordinate and implement. So what we're doing is getting everybody together, talking about how should this look, and then thinking about it today so that March 2027, we could actually create one of these events. And so there's a lot of work and a lot of partners across the healthcare. They included a pediatrician in this, so I'm excited about that. And I think I get to turn it over to you now.
Okay. So as Leslie mentioned earlier, in 2023, there's kind of a reset. And part of that reset was bringing in parent voices, and I got to be one of those voices. I had a 4-year-old at the time, he was just turning 4, and so I was into pre-K as he was going into pre-K. And now he's almost 7. But part of my work as in the steering committee has been bringing in the parent voice. And so we are doing that through a couple different ways. One of the things that ARPA did was allow there to be a role that did a pre-K equity plan. And we've been handed this beautiful spreadsheet that we can work from to say, what can we do as parents, steering committee members, community members to make equitable pre-K. And some of that is small things like making sure there's culturally relevant books in the classroom, and some of it is engaging with the parents more. And so part of what we're doing to engage with parents more is having some listening sessions. And so that's some work that I'm doing now with Charlie she's formerly with Action for Equity. And we are connecting with parents in the community to learn what are the barriers to getting your kids into pre-K. We know that we talked about this recently at a steering committee meeting. Data and stories are the things that really show what's happening in our community. And so hearing from the parents is vital. So we are going to be doing some listening sessions and gathering data, hearing from parents across the county to hear what those barriers are. And then trying to bridge the gap between community members, parents, and pre-K teachers so that when your child does go into pre-K, there's a stronger support system there. And then the next thing is we all know how vital sustainable funding is. And as Leslie mentioned too, having these community connections is key. We need sustainable funding so that this can sustainably, exist and grow. And so some of the things that we're doing right now is trying to connect with local government to see how can they show up for 4-year-olds and commit to a consistent, sustainable funding stream so that we can really commit, not just with like ARPA dollars, not just with little bits here and there, but so that we can have sustainable funding that we can not only get kids in the classroom, but also have data so we can show how it's strengthening our community. I think that's it for my slides. Unless you want me to.
I was like, I want to use the, did you talk about this?
See, we gave that taking care of the disabled. Some of you all are older like me, so you get it. We are having the Early Childhood Blueprint Summit on April 23rd. We'd like to invite you all to join us. There is a small fee, but we can scholarship anybody who would like to attend who can't afford the $25. Just let us know. I think we each group was coming together and gonna plan something for the spring. So there was the pre-K priority, there was Winston-Salem State, there was Family Friend and Neighbor Care. That's not our new name anymore. It's Family Friend and Neighbor Child Care Alliance is our new name. And so those are parents and individuals who are caring for children outside of the licensed child care system. And so we all came together with the help of M Creative again to put this summit on. We've invited people from all of the different tracks, which is pre-K, early intervention, and family friend and neighbor care. So we have people coming from across the country to talk to you all, and we'll also be sharing what's happening in our community. And so there's breakfast and lunch and lots of good opportunities to network and to learn more about the work that is happening in our community. I think that was it.
Yeah, that's it. Katura is not giving herself enough credit because her group, Child Care Resource Center and the Family Friend and Neighborhood Alliance, Caregiver Alliance.
Family Friend and Neighbor
Child Care Alliance, they just renamed themselves, sorry. A lot of acronyms going on too. But Katura and her group have been vital in coordinating this along with our friends at M Creative in getting this put together. And then we have, one of the big things we wanted to also state about this is we have made a concerted effort over the last 2 to 3 years coming out of the pandemic of really aligning ourselves with coalitions, not only across the state, but local coalitions that are doing similar work. So one thing, I don't want to confuse people too much, but you guys have probably been in this room listening to the other coalitions that are working, like How Are the Children? They were here last month. The Campaign for Grade Level Reading, that's backboned by Love Literacy and the work they're doing. So we're a part of all of those. We sit in seats at those tables and in circles. So it really is like these concentric circles and connecting ecosystem that we're trying to make sure when we are there, that we're maintaining the work of, elevating 4-year-olds, but understanding how the trajectory of what we're doing also aligns with others. The other thing that we've also heard is from the county, even from the school system, is if you come to us and ask us for things, whether it's money, support, resources, we need a unified ask. So the Thriving Together Network is another one, like we've been talking about. What does an aligned contribution model look like? So that we're coming with one voice and we show how it impacts the full kind of like the macro system. So we're staying in our lane as far as the work that we're doing on 4-year-olds, but we're partnering with others like in this work to make sure that the things that support us before the year of 4 and after are aligned. So I just want to name that. It's not like we're working in isolation. We really are trying to partner with these other groups. And that's one of the things that takes time and energy. And that's the other thing I would just point to is like, sometimes I feel the need to say, okay, we started talking about this in 2014, pre-K priority or universal pre-K, and it's now 10 years later. Like, what have you done? Where have you been? How have you showed up? And you probably know in a systems change, something that's been built over, like 50 years, if you're trying to restructure and change a system that's been built bit by bit, it takes a long time to kind of like steer the ship in a different direction. So we've been chipping away at that, but it does take public will. And so for you guys showing up here today shows that you still believe in this work. And we'll end on that to say, if you have not already signed the pre-K pledge, please do. You can do it very easily by scanning the QR code. It's not going to commit you to anything where you can get on our email list. That's the only commitment. But really what it does is it shows that there's an opportunity when we do maybe go to the county with a unified ask of some sort, that we can say we have 5 or 10,000 or however many signatures of people here in this county that believe it's important. And we're up, I think I'm looking at some of our support in the back. I know we've at least got over 5,000. So, if you guys could all share that and continue to help us get the pre-K pledge out, it does make a difference when we go to the county. So I am going to wrap up with that and ask if you have any questions. We'd love to answer anything you may have. Oh, yeah. Can we switch to make sure? I think it needs to be turned on.
Is it?
Yeah. If you have any questions, you know it all already. Yeah, Valerie.
How much is the cost of having universal pre-K in Forsyth County? Do you have a number?
Yes. And it would scare you to death if I said the number. So here's what we do know.
Repeat the question,
please. Okay. The question that I said would scare us to death was how much would it cost for universal pre-K in our community? It sounds like a huge lift when you first say it, because a high quality pre-K slot is about $15,000 per child for all the things that go into making sure the teacher is high quality with a degree, the classroom, et cetera, et cetera. So if you kind of extrapolate that out, and you factor in already what we have in public funding, because we do have a good number of publicly funded slots, but I mean, it could be anywhere, and I'm just going to be real, it could be up towards 40 million a year. But we're not asking for that. We're going to start small. And also when you have sustainable funding from a place that people know that the return on investment is worth it, people are willing to show up, whether it's from a county perspective of some kind of increase. Would I pay $20 more a year for some kind of taxes? I would, but maybe not everybody else would. And you also have to think about tax relief breaks. So you could build stuff in for that, for people in the community that it would be a burden. I think the other thing is when we focus on business is a big piece of that. What we've seen in these other communities, businesses show up, and that is a big piece of funding that could take some of the onus off of the county, the city, whoever. But if we have public-private partnerships with businesses, that would be huge. And that's Charlotte has done a great job of that. Another question?
One thing I wanted to add, Leslie, was that children are only 4 1. And so if we don't do something to meet them when they're 4, then we miss that opportunity and then they go into the school system. So I think that, communities have to look at it a little bit differently. You only get to be a baby once, you only get to be a toddler once. And then if we aren't doing what needs to be done to help them develop and grow into the citizens that we want to have in our community, then it's a lot of fun.
And I appreciate that, Katora. And that's the other thing with Kathy's point too, from a health perspective. I mean, you have people in the healthcare systems that say, this is important. We have people coming together when one of the things that Kathy is leading from the health department, from the school partnership alliance. What is it? School health partnership? School health alliance. School health. And so we have people that are coming from all kind of walks of life that are in the health aspects, and also DSS that are in and a part of these work groups that believe this is important. So it's just really kind of convincing the people who hold some purse strings. So, did you have another comment, anybody on the panel? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
How are we to decide between 0 to 3 and pre-K at 4?
Okay, good question. I almost don't want to repeat it because it's hard to answer. So she said, how do we decide, I guess, like prioritizing funding or resources for the age group of 0 to 3 versus 4-year-olds? Well, you're asking the wrong person in terms of priorities because 4-year-olds are my priority, but I think it goes back to, I appreciate the question. It goes back to what I mentioned in one of the earlier slides is people say, well, why are you guys focused on that? We're focused on it because there's already a very strong infrastructure built. So it would take less money to kind of start ramping up where we already are. We have some really good already programmatic pieces of this, like what the structure and framework would look like. We just need to build the support around it and get more opportunities for kids to actually access it. So it's not as heavy a lift for 0 to 3. But we do know the 0 to 3 is important, no doubt. Yes, ma'am.
I know that there are a number of states that have universal pre-K. My own daughter worked in DC public schools and was a 3 and 4-year-old bilingual pre-K teacher there. Now works for the state of Virginia that he's working toward that universal. I'm wondering if I'm glad that we're thinking about what different counties are doing in our state. But are we also looking at the data of what's coming out from those states that have been rolling this out and the changes that have happened to see if we might be able to pivot some of the mindsets to be able to get some of those more
All right.
Well, I mean, I have an answer, but I want somebody else to. Well, and Kathy,
to repeat it.
yeah, Kathy, please add in. I will just say, because part of the research has been what we've done over the last 5 to 7 years at those other counties and also the states. And so, we took like a deep dive about 5 years ago, pre-COVID. We even had somebody from Portland, Oregon come and talk to us on a Zoom call about how they motivated, the folks in their county to do that. What's interesting to me too is that you'll see, sometimes we do a opening slide, I could have done for you guys to kind of surprise people that there are a lot of what we would deem red states that have universal pre-K. And it doesn't have to be, this binary choice of, yeah, I agree, I don't. I mean, we pretty much think that there is this is a bipartisan agreement that we need all 4-year-olds to enter kindergarten ready to learn. So back to your question though, I think in terms of the research, you're right, we could bring some very pointed outcomes to show for those not the counties, the states that have done that, how it has changed the trajectory for their 4-year-olds into kindergarten. Sometimes I'll be honest with you, and we can show the best data ever, but if there is a mindset for a certain faction of folks that hold the purse strings, the research doesn't seem to be convincing enough. It doesn't matter how good it is. And that's part of the will piece. I think it's going to come down to community voice saying, we demand you do this. So, Kathy, you want to add to that?
No, and I very much appreciate part of that question is this is not just a local issue. It's a state and it's a national issue. And if you look at the state funding, children that are in before school age, we spend half as much as when they get to school. And so it is raising the question on the state level, should we do better? Because it's important in how we do in our schools is going to attract businesses and is going to impact the economic viability of our community. And so, yes, you're right. It's not just our businesses and our county and city. This is a bigger issue than that. There's a question up here. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, first I want to thank you all for all the work you do. I've been watching your work for the past decade, and you've done all the right things. You built the coalition, you have the research with the cohort, you bring in health, you bring in your parents. You've done it all, and it is frustrating as an educator that the will in this community just doesn't seem to be there. And I don't know why. I've been stymied by it myself. I've worked at Whitaker and I've worked at Old Town. And what was so glaring to me was on that first day of kindergarten, it's not a level playing field. And when you look at the data, the beginning of the year data for like at an Old Town, how they are usually 1 year behind, sometimes 2 years behind in literacy skills. And that's when that catch up, you're in this cycle of trying to catch up to third grade reading. So I appreciate that. Question, I have so many questions about why.
Maybe we can recruit you to one of our workers.
I've heard, I actually brought a state senator to Old Town 10 years ago to look at our data wall. And he agreed with everything I said, but he said what he hears is it's not our fault their parents don't make enough money to afford pre-K. I've heard it's nothing but babysitting. Why do we need to have babysitting for the children? Is that a sense you get in this community?
Yeah, so I'll repeat the question and I'm gonna look to Katora to answer that. What this teacher was saying is that she appreciates the work that has been going on and feels we're doing the right things. And it's been interesting in our community, I would say, Forsyth County in general, to really get the public will behind things like this, these different initiatives. And she wanted to know, how do you also answer when someone says, well, parents need to be doing that year 4-year-old preparation. And it's not like a state senator she spoke to at one of the schools, that school visits said, well, how do you convince people to give money for this when they say parents should just make more money and be able to afford it? It's not my fault they can't afford pre-K. And then also it's just babysitting. So what's the big deal? So I'm going to let Katora answer that because that is something we have heard and we've had to dispel that.
You know, I think that when you, like I said, children are only children once. And when you think about all of the things that families with resources do with their children, they have the time, they have the resources, they have sometimes the education to do what needs to be done and to seek those out. Whereas all children should have those opportunities. We know that the brain develops, I think it's 85% of the brain develops between the ages of 0 and 3 years old. And so, and it may be higher than that. I can't remember what the exact percentage is, but so those years are really important in terms of building the brain, helping make those connections in the brain so that children have the ability to learn and to be successful in life. When you think about, and I guess that's pretty much it. We need people, we think about developing other countries, France, Britain, Japan, Spain. Those parents have all the resources they need. They have the stay at home. Moms can choose to stay at home and still have the resources they need. Moms can choose to put their children in a child care program, early education, and have the resources that they need. And so we talk about those countries, the children from those countries being so far ahead of children here in America. And the reason is because they do make those investments that they earn for children and families.
And I'll answer the question on a personal side. So despite the fact that I'm old, I was the oldest of 4 girls. And my mom was an elementary school teacher. And despite that, she put me in pre-K because she recognized that she was having to pay attention to my younger siblings, and I needed to learn how to get along with people my own age and learn those skills. Apparently, I failed scissor cutting because there were no scissors. When you have really young siblings, there's none of those, not even blunt edge. And so she was always upset about that. But and I do feel like that helped me tremendously when you go to kindergarten. It wasn't a culture shock at all.
I think another thing, and I was going to ask maybe if Molly could speak to this from a parent perspective. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on that in terms of how you felt about, actually living that experience over these last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I know we're about to run out of time, but part of me wants to say, well, so what if it's a babysitter? We need a village. You need help, but it's not that. I mean, it's meals. It's community, it's your child, trusting another adult. I mean, we know all these things. Our big joke in our household was the raise we got when my son went to public school because it was intense to pay for pre-K. But that's what we had to do to work, and we needed to work to pay our bills. So, you know, sometimes where do you invest? But we know if for no other reason, we need people working to build our economy, and so their children need to be in a safe place. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but,
I think that's the perfect way to end it. I appreciate that too, and we'll be glad to take any questions after.
One more question. One more.
You can choose pre-K or prison.
Well said. You heard that comment. You can choose pre-K or prison. And thank you all so much for providing us startling information. And that's the kind of information we need to go forward with action. Join me in thanking our panel for being great. I think I can speak to them if they wouldn't mind staying just a minute or so to answer your questions personally. We hope you've enjoyed today, but we also hope you'll come back next month. We're excited to have Heather Coons, the Director of Research for Public Schools First, North Carolina, who's going to give us some more startling information. Research, very current research on where the private voucher money is going to destroy public education areas in our county and across the state. So please come back to hear that information and other things that they are trying to do to prevent what some people call the decimation of public education in North Carolina. Let's leave with a good spirit though, because we have a lot of work to do. Thank you so much for being here. We will be sending out the slides. There are cookies still out there, I believe. And also, if you are not on our mailing list and didn't get a chance to sign up to get slides, get information about the summit and other things going on, please leave us that information.